Hello, in this video I want to tell you something about the forgotten part of World War II. And now, of course, that ultimately that is subjective. For people in Europe, Asian battlefields are not often discussed about, and vice versa is also true. So since I'm from Europe, I want to focus on parts of the European theater, of the European battlefield that are almost never talked about, and even I wouldn't have known about them if it weren't for Michael Bullrey and his famous book about the Third Reich. But yeah, just to make my initial point more clear, it's not like in the Western world the Japanese invasion of Vietnam and Malaysia are often discussed. There is this cult image of Japanese troops attacking Malaysia on bicycles. And of course, in Malaysia, that's not a forgotten image. The Japanese used bicycles because they produced less sound than motorbikes, so they used them in order to surprise their enemy. Here you can see the famous image of the fights in the Philippines. And there is that crazy story about Japanese troops on Burma getting eaten by crocodiles in the same way in which the American troops, after the Indianapolis was sinked, were then eaten by sharks. But okay, if we are talking about the European theater and about the forgotten parts of the European theater, then I want to tell you something about the Saarland offensive. So the Saarland offensive was an attempt of the French very early in the war to use the fact that most of German military was in Poland. So in September in 1939, French troops decided to enter into Germany, into the Saarland region. And that was happening during this early period called the Phony War. The Phony War lasted from the beginning of World War II up until the German Spring Offensive in 1940. So the Saarland offensive is still a very controversial topic. Some historians think that had the French continued, that they could have kicked Germany early out of the war, and Alfred Jodl, interestingly, even said so during his Nuremberg trials. And the only French general that actually believed that it was a mistake not to continue with the Saarland offensive was Henry Giraud. But okay, now let me explain what went wrong. Why did this Saarland offensive not work? Well, in the beginning, the French troops were still not that full of hatred for the Germans, and they did not want to kill too many German civilians. They were also scared of the Germans retaliating, and here you can see that cult image of a French soldier conquering a small German town on the border. But yeah, and also in the same way in which the French overestimated the effectiveness of their own defense line, the Maginot Line, they ended up overestimating the effectiveness of the German Siegfried Line. And the French, they believe that for them, that it would be the best to just be defensive. They were still thinking about World War II through the prism of World War I. But yeah, that was a mistake, because World War II became a completely new war due to the invention of tanks and better aircrafts. But this crazy offensive ended up killing 2,000 French soldiers and 600 Germans, and the French actually did end up destroying a small German town on the border, but nothing really significant happened, which is why I refer to it as a forgotten part of World War II. Now, if you ever wondered, if you ever imagined yourself to be a German soldier, and if you ever wanted to know where was the best place to be sent as a soldier of the Wehrmacht, I believe that the answer simply has to be the Channel Islands, Guernsey, Herm, Sark, Jersey. So the only parts of the British Empire that were conquered by Hitler were the Channel Islands. And what's interesting, the British, they never attempted to conquer their islands back from Germany. They never even forcibly recruited the people from those islands, so it was definitely one of the most peaceful places to be. And a German captain, Ernst Junger, Michael Bullrey brings us his testimony. Michael Bullrey actually says that Junger wrote that he felt like a tourist with a weapon, quite literally. He felt like a tourist with a weapon because it was so uneventful on the Channel Islands. And let me also put the occupation of the Channel Islands in the perspective. The Eastern Front was the hardest place to be for German soldiers. Then, okay, it also wasn't fun being a German soldier in Normandy during D-Day. But, for example, many places that were occupied by Germany, that in the beginning the Germans expected them to be very peaceful, they ended up being pretty violent and not a fun experience for German soldiers. Yugoslavia, for example, after the Battle of Sutjeska, after hundreds of German soldiers actually end up dying fighting the Yugoslav communist guerrillas, many Germans actually asked to be sent on the Eastern Front, probably because they really disliked fighting in the mountains of Sutjeska, where they were unable to use their tanks. So it was very tiring for them, constantly being in the hills on that rough terrain, trying to fight guerrilla fighters that were hiding behind rocks and also shelling them. But yeah, so comparatively to Yugoslavia, the Channel Islands truly were like a vacation. Of course, occasionally there would be some British commandos attacking the Channel Islands, but given the fact that English people lived on them, the Germans ended up treating them pretty well. They saw them as racially equal to them, not like, for example, the Slavic population in the East. But unfortunately, all the Jews on the Channel Islands were killed, and some priests that were critical of Hitler were also killed. But now, for the last part of this video, I want to tell you something about the French occupation, some aspects of French occupation that are also not often discussed. Now, of course, the French also had a relatively strong resistance, although much weaker than Yugoslavia because they were much more decentralized. They weren't all unified like Tito. That's why they were much weaker. And yeah, they did not have the advantage of waging a guerrilla war in the mountains like the Yugoslav partisans could in Yugoslavia. The French, that is, did not have that advantage. But a not often discussed part of the German occupation of France is that somewhere around 70,000 bastard children were born as a result of relationships between German soldiers and French women. Now, okay, maybe occasionally they truly did fall in love with each other, mostly French women that ended up being in such relationships probably were trying to get better life for themselves, for their families, by being with German soldiers. And yeah, that is kind of a taboo topic today. And unfortunately, most of these women after the war were publicly humiliated by the French people, and yeah, they did not have a good time after the war. Their hair was cut in a kind of public humiliation ritual. And also a not often discussed fact is that even a liberal country like France ended up executing some collaborators without trial, somewhere around 8,000 of them. But okay, still, if we compare that to, for example, with Tito's Yugoslavia, yeah, Yugoslavia did end up executing way more collaborators without trial. That is the Bleiburg incident. I might do a video about the Bleiburg incident as well, a very controversial incident in Croatia, and I would say generally in the Balkan region altogether. And also one of the craziest aspects of the German occupation of France was that the only place in the world where some German officers, and of course I'm talking about a great minority, so a vast majority of German officers were heterosexual. But according to Michael Bollery, in the higher echelons of the German military, the only place where gay sex was tolerated was in France. Actually, in Germany, in the Third Reich, they would kill you. For that, Hitler was very clear about his attitudes towards gay people. But yeah, that's another bizarre fact about the French occupation done by the Germans. But okay, what was the point of this video? Well, the point was to illustrate that World War II was a truly global war, and for some people it was a slaughterhouse. Like if you were on the Eastern Front, if you were on the Channel Islands, it was like a bizarre vacation even, as Ernst Jünger said. So the point was to bring to light some forgotten aspects of World War II and show that the war is not always just glorious battles and heroic deeds. It is sometimes just people observing a beach for like 4 years with not much happening. Okay, that's all for this video, and don't forget to drop a like, share and sub if you liked this video.